Hello there, folks. How you doing? Yes, Roel was having a little trouble on his end. We had to switch him over to his phone. All you impatient people, sorry. We could have made you listen to him sounding half like a robot. Would you, if you preferred that? We could have done that, but no, that's all right. We got it all worked out now. Everybody sounds good. So, all right, everybody's happy, and here we are live. Okay, so.
Well, hello, Mr. Grumpy.
Oh, well, he goes ahead and names himself, doesn't he? So, all right. So,
love the wig, Paul.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a great wig.
It's even worse in real life.
At least it was when we first saw you here today. Anyway,
yeah.
Well, we were working on Rules audio issues there, so you looked like one of the Beatles for a second.
Elton John.
He was the
Him too.
playing barrister.
Yes.
Rocket Man.
So obviously, I hope everybody out there is coping with the Corona crisis, and I hope everybody's doing well, and I hope everybody's staying safe. And I don't know, does anybody else here want to say a little something about Corona before we get started, seeing as it's current event?
My thought for the day is that we should be looking at per capita statistics. My entire government is full of idiots, and that's enough for the moment.
Sure. All right. Let's see. Hope rules end is in hand. Yes, rules end is fine now, Shane. We're good, buddy. So, anyways. All right, so obviously we're here today to talk about blood planting, some of the phone records in this, right, Magilla?
Yeah. So I have it's really on the voicemail deletions.
Okay, right. The voicemails that were deleted from Teresa's phone, the ones that. Right, and those would be the ones that Judge Willis couldn't see any reason why they were relevant, right?
Well,
or why they would matter
for his purposes.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows exactly which ones you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. It seemed like some voicemails had disappeared after Teresa disappeared. Okay, so if you go to
this one,
yeah, and then start with just that survey.
Okay,
go to that thread.
All righty, there we are.
Okay, so I guess the last time we presented my working theory, we've been on a journey of my theory of why the dog tracks are showing that the scent dogs track the killer instead of Teresa. That was very inculpating of Ryan and perhaps Scott Blodorn. So I tried to develop a full working theory, assuming Ryan did it. Okay, so this is still under the working theory that Ryan did it. We've been trying to piece that together. I think I published version 7 of that. I think it answers all the known evidence right now. And one of the last things we worked on that we already covered in a talk was the planting of the cremains. And we talked about how I didn't think that under this theory, Ryan would have planted the cremains, that it looked to me like Ryan planted the cremains at the Cusp Road burial site, and that law enforcement excavated the cremains and for some reason put some of them in the burn pit and dumped the rest of it at the county quarry. So if you don't remember any of that, that's all recorded and already up on the wall. So after we did that, Roel and I, we're looking at the blood planting and the RAV4 in detail. We worked on this better part of a week, I think. And I did publish some partial results and asked for help for people on Twitter on different things. So if you're following me on Twitter, probably what I put out was a little bit confusing. But
Twitter can be that way at times.
Yeah, so we're looking for the opportunity here to go through our reasoning, where we ended up, and all the things we considered. So one of the things I did at some point was just ask the Twitter sphere the simple question of who do you think collected Stephen's blood from his bathroom sink and vanity while he was at Menards on 11/3? And I had an answer in there, no one. He lied about it. Never happened. That was the losing answer.
Right.
The most believed answer is that a rogue Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office law enforcement officer did it, getting very close to 50% of the votes out of 177 votes.
Right.
And then what was interesting was the least likely suspect was the one that was in Zellner's brief, Ryan. And what's interesting is while Roel and I were working on this, this was about where our thinking had ended up for totally different reasons. So we're going to look at how we thought through this. If you go to the next tweet in the thread, if we can pull up the little spreadsheet section. Yeah.
Want to zoom in more?
Yeah. We need to pretty much do that.
There you go.
Okay. That's pretty good. Okay. So what I did was built a little table to sort of describe what we went through. So we have 3 suspects. We actually found 2 windows of interest that we investigated very rigorously for blood planting. One was the blood was stolen on, we'll start it with blood collection. So the first opportunity for blood collection was when Steve goes to Menards. He sees taillights behind his house. And on the way, he's at Menards. We have video showing him there at 8:20. And then he goes by the county jail to drop something off for Jody. He actually signs in at the county jail around 9:11. And he's home based on the Google time from the jail. He's home around 9:30. So this is actually an hour and a half opportunity where he's away from his house. This is where he says he remembers breaking open the cut on his hand, spilling blood in his sink, and taping his hand up with duct tape like everyone does. Maybe buy him some Band-Aids next time. But yeah. And we looked at the 3 main suspects. So Ryan, in this scenario, Ryan is this evening we suspect he planted the cremains in the John DeBurn barrel, and he buried the cremains in the Cuss Road burial site. That's our current best working theory.
Yeah, the rest of it.
So it seems like that day he has the wrong address. Yeah, he has the wrong addresses. And because he has the wrong address, it seems sort of odd that he'd break into Stephen's trailer. Actually, as we talked it through, it really seemed like the most likely thing was that he would have just put that in that burn barrel, that small amount of cremains that he brought. Remember, there's not very much in the John DeBurn barrel, and he would have gotten out of there. That's what I think. I don't think, he was sitting with his taillights on, which is pretty, for somebody who's sneaking around, that's pretty foolish to be sitting in the Cuss Road circle with your taillights on. Actually, Stephen thinks that where he saw the lights, he think was closer to his house. So this is somebody who drove a car all the way down to his house. Doesn't really sound like what Ryan would have done. He would have risked being caught. Does he have the know-how to do that? At that point, he doesn't really know that house is even of interest to him. So I'm saying he doesn't really know why he'd be in there. What's his reward? His main goal is to remove suspicion from himself.
Right.
His goal is not to ensure that Stephen Avery is easily convicted. So the idea that he wants to go find something of Stephen's to plant in the RAV4, it's just not much reward for Ryan. Just getting all this stuff in the vicinity of Stephen's home is, I think, plenty for him. So there's very little reward, and this is high risk. So we don't think he has any know-how of Stephen's home, Stephen's dog, who Stephen lives with. He doesn't know that Stephen doesn't live with somebody else. Even if he saw Stephen drive away with Chuck, he might see the lights are off, but even peeking in those windows could be a pretty big mistake. So he has a high risk going in here.
Yeah.
Also, we have this other strange thing that Stephen reported, the cigarette smoke residual after the event. Now, Ryan would be sneaking around here trying to avoid getting anybody to notice him. I just cannot see him. He might smoke sometimes. I don't know. But for him to be, just planted cremains in a barrel, breaking into a house that he doesn't even think is the person he's trying to move suspicion to, and then to smoke a cigarette in that house. This is getting to the point where it seems almost absurd.
Right.
Now, if he did go in there, if he did go in the house and find the blood, he does a very good opportunity to plant the blood. He's in control of the RAV4 at this point in time in this scenario. But that's the only thing really working for it being Ryan. So we were really having a hard time thinking Ryan did this. Okay, so then we turn our attention to suspect number 2, Bobby Dassey. So Bobby supposedly was outdoors, shooting the breeze with the guys when Stephen hurt his hand on the trailer and started bleeding again, reached into his sedan, or coupe, I guess he had a coupe, I'm not sure, and dripped on the gear shift, and then went into the house. So, and then Bobby decided not to go with them to Menards. So this is, he knows Stephen is bleeding. I'm sure he also knows how to break into his uncle's house. The house doesn't seem very secure.
Right.
Now, we're under the Ryan did it scenario, though, so Bobby is not the killer. So he has the know-how to break in, but what's the reward? And I think at this point in time, he would have had maybe seen some news saying his uncle was the last person seen or one of the last people. His uncle isn't really even a suspect yet. I think the only reason he'd go in there is to look around, see if he sees any evidence his uncle did something. I think that's fairly possible.
Mm-hmm.
The risk is low because he knows his way in, and all he's got to do is just get out to his yard, and nobody's going to think anything of it. Now, he just heard that his uncle might have killed someone, and he's just curious to see if there's any evidence of it. So he's going to sneak into his uncle's house. And then while he's in his uncle's house, is he going to smoke a cigarette? Now, this seems very unlikely too, right? So we do have photos. Also, some people were trying to say that Bobby doesn't smoke cigarettes, but we do have photos of Bobby smoking at least something that you hold in your hand that's wrapped in wrapping papers. So he does smoke, but this would not be the time to be smoking. If he wasn't the killer, Stephen's very possibly the killer. The only reason he's in there is he's curious about it. The last thing he wants to do is attract the attention of somebody who might be a killer. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
My reasoning, or you think it does make sense that he was in there?
No, not any sense. No.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then even if he gets this blood, he's not in this scenario. He doesn't have control of the RAV4, so he has no opportunity to plant the blood unless he gives it to law enforcement. So that's the only thing I see making sense is he would have given. He found some blood in the house, gave it to the police. We don't have any evidence of that, but that would the police will find out have opportunity to plant. So now we're going to do our 4-part test again on this person being a rogue Manitowoc County law enforcement officer. So early on in the days of TikTok Manitowoc, a lot of us really were suspecting that Manitowoc County was staking out Stephen's home all the time since the depositions. And the depositions had run most this month. The last one had been on the 26th of October. There was one on the 13th of October. A lot of people think some damaging evidence was in the depositions. And a lot of the characters involved were the characters involved, we think, in the planning of the evidence. Mm-hmm. So we know, and that was Link and Colburn and Kushke and the old sheriff and the new sheriff and a whole bunch of other people. And the depositions were starting to turn on the people at the top of the pyramid, but they hadn't given theirs yet.
Right.
So I think there's a good chance when Calumet County starts telling them that Stephen Avery may be involved in a missing person report, and that comes into the Manitowoc County group, that they're itching to see if this can solve their problem with Avery, even that very first night. So we know Colburn went out there, at 7:30? Is that everybody's recollection? 7:30?
Was it 7:30?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so he went out there. I think he sees Stephen riding around a golf cart. Stephen lets him look through the house real briefly. Colburn goes on, does some mysterious stuff, talks on the radio about license plates. He rendezvous with Remaker. At first, I thought Lank might be unaccounted for, but some of the people on Reddit told me that there is a threat of Lank getting called back in and being involved with the police that night. But there's a lot of people in this rogue Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office group. There's a bunch of retired people like Bushman and Sheriff Peterson's. I guess he flies off into Seattle or something, right? So he's, but the old sheriff's around. So we don't really know who this guy is. Roel and I started joking that it was the cigarette smoking man. That was our placeholder for it.
Is that like the one-armed man in The Fugitive?
Nice, from X-Files. He's
X-Files, yes.
Some people call him Cancer Man, but
oh yeah, I do think I remember that episode.
okay. So let's see. Do these guys probably know? They know which house is Stevens. My belief is they might have been watching the house. If they pulled a police car, or even an off-duty policeman pulls his car into the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, I could see him sitting there with his taillights on. He's not worried about getting caught by anybody. What would his reward be? They're looking to find evidence that would inculpate Stephen. They aren't looking for blood. They're just looking for any evidence. The risk of a policeman breaking in is pretty low. The policeman can just say he was responding to a call, show his badge.
Right.
It's not like Ryan getting confronted by a shotgun or something.
Right.
Do any of these police smoke cigarettes? I think we suspect Lank did because we heard he's having problems like that. But it seems likely that somebody in that group would smoke cigarettes. But what really makes sense is the police are in that house looking for evidence, and they smoked a cigarette for a totally different reason than anybody else would. They smoked a cigarette to leave the smell of the cigarette, to let Stephen know that they're up his tail and he's not going to get away with anything. They're doing it out of pure arrogance. And I think this is something that really makes me think that that person in that home was a policeman, a rogue policeman. I'm trying to avoid lumping our law enforcement together because I think that's a mistake we're making on the case.
Right.
And then the police are going to get an opportunity to plant. They're actually going to get 2 opportunities to plant. I went back over Zellner's, I guess it was the Denny argument about Ryan, and she argues that the police don't have any opportunity to plant. Her argument is based on a lot of faulty assumptions. But the main thing she tries to do is not contradict any police statements. So I think the purpose within the Denny filing for Ryan is to not take the police on, not necessarily that Zellner doesn't think they were involved. She just wants to say that Ryan had the opportunity so that she can get the Denny ruling without having to say that she thinks police planted evidence. I don't think she's clearing the police. Is that sort of what you guys are getting?
Yep.
I don't think she should. I feel like she says things to be political sometimes or diplomatic.
Yeah. Diplomatic.
But it was in an interview. She told a news reporter at some point in time the police was cleared from planting the blood. Well, that was the interpretation of the reporter, but maybe
I think she wanted a ruling on that Denny witness without taking the police on.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm a research engineer. I'm not a lawyer, so I suspect it's a strategy, a legal strategy, and I don't think, for a reason that her argument was ironclad, that the police didn't have an opportunity to collect and plant. Because I'm going to show you that I found plenty, and Roel found a bunch of this, and we found plenty.
Yeah.
Okay, so first opportunity to collect, we think, is on the 3rd. We agree with that first slide that the most likely person to have collected the blood was the rogue Manitowoc County Sheriff Office law enforcement officer. We don't know which one, but they're all over the place. There's many of them. We have 3 pretty well picked out, but we think from the time this phone call goes into that sheriff's office, there's people out to get Stephen with 36 million reasons why. Okay, so that's the first part of the table. So there's an opportunity to collect. We think the most likely person is the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office. We actually don't think, it doesn't make sense for Bobby under the scenario that Ryan's the killer.
Right.
We're not saying a scenario where Bobby's the killer. And, with Bobby, he might want to steal the blood to make sure that Stephen's implicated. Right. But under the scenario Ryan's the killer, which is what is our prime suspect, it doesn't make sense for Bobby. There's a small chance maybe he gave the blood to the police. Okay, so now we come to the evening of the 4th. The 4th is the night that Ryan has the mysterious 22 no-call ID calls, and I think 21 of them are this mysterious type D that doesn't show up in his phone records very often. that Zellner's identified as likely calls from law enforcement. I think she was daring them to show their phone records. They didn't.
Right.
So I think that's probably still the lead case, is that the phone calls are coming from law enforcement. Now, in our working theory, our best working theory is that Ryan has said somebody in the search party or Ryan on the 3rd found the RAV4 on the perimeter of the Avery salvage yard, and he's going to Mike Hallbach, says, Mike, you really could confirm this, you know the car best, and we should tell law enforcement. Ryan might have said somebody else tipped him in the search party. And what they're doing on the 4th, I think, is Mike Hallbach is the person who can ID the car. Ryan's taking him to the location he heard about. And the police are on the phone because if Ryan and Mike get caught, the police don't want to be caught on the ground. So we think they parked at a safe distance. This is shown by Lufttrack 4. They walk together, one of them carrying Common Scent with the scent article, to the RAV4 and walk back to the car later. We know that their last no-call ID call is at 7:25 p.m. And at that point in time, whoever was in law enforcement that was talking with Ryan on the phone is aware of the location of the RAV4, 7:25 p.m. on the 4th. So what this does is it opens up a large window of opportunity for the blood to be planted in the RAV4. That RAV4 is going to sit where it is until 10:30 the next morning, when Pam Sturm runs her charade and pretends to be led to the car by the Holy Spirit.
Right.
But during that time, we know Queso knows they're probably the ones that Mike Hallbach contacted, was his own police, probably Sheriff Pagel. And we know that Remaker was constantly calling into that investigation to get updates. And at some point in that evening, Manitowoc knows. And I think Roel and I worked out that we think Queso would probably tell Manitowoc to watch the car because it's their territory. So we've basically got the big bad wolf watching Little Red Robin Hood from 7:30 p.m. until 10:30 a.m. the next morning. I think that's 15 hours. So what we see is there's 15 hours of opportunity to plant blood in the car before Pam of God shows up. We also, and I think we have another thing we did during this interview was there were some pictures that we think may have shown Slim Jim damage to the driver's door on the RAV4. And we looked at some other photos, and we also located a place we think there might have been a wedge and air wedge damage to use what's called a Big Easy stick. Mm-hmm. So we see two different pieces of evidence on the car that suggests the car was broken into. The Big Easy stick evidence is there in Pam Sturm's photographs. So that would say that happened before Pam Sturm.
Right.
The front door, where it looks like a wedge and a Slim Jim were used, we haven't found a photograph it wasn't in. I thought I did early in the week, but it turns out you can't see the damage from the outside of the car because of the way the weather stripping works. Mm. But we do have evidence of the car being broken into. We have 15 hours when it could have been broken into, right, where it was only being watched by a skeleton crew of Manitowoc County personnel. And they're off book because they don't want to record anything about what they're doing because they're not supposed to really know about the car until they get the search warrant.
Right. So I should have been Calumet monitoring it as well. But yeah, anyway.
They're off book. They're watching it for 15 hours. We got Slim Jim marks. We got an air wedge
Lots
mark.
of monkey business, in other words. Sorry, no offense.
Well, it's just this is a 15-hour window of opportunity. She said they didn't even have 8 minutes or something.
That's a terrible pun, dude. That's a terrible pun. Go.
Now we are decoding the Ryan law enforcement exchange, but I think Zellner did in her hypothetical too. I think she was just blowing smoke up the police to try to get her Denny argument to not get. She would have to take a lot of flack to bring the police into that argument, is what I suspect.
Right.
Okay, so we have an opportunity to collect on the 3rd, an opportunity to plant on the 4th, going into the morning of the 5th. And then now if we look at the 5th, we find another opportunity to collect blood and another opportunity to plant blood. Okay, so on the 5th, after Pam of God, I'll let Roel talk this through. This is really all Roel stuff. So.
But it's
Right,
a little
Roel?
bit small for me to read. It's a little bit small for me to read on my smartphone, so maybe
Oh,
it's
that's
better
what you're
to-
working on a phone.
Okay.
Can I just ask, have you got it set to music to sing on the piano for us?
Basically, Roel came up with all the police reports for this, but
Yeah,
okay. So what I'll do is I'll sort
I
of
think
get
we talked about it last week also.
Yeah, we talked about it a bit. So at 3:58 p.m., Detective Remaker, along with Steyer, force entry into Stevens' home. Now, remember, the RAV4 is on the Avery salvage yard until I think we decided 9:25 p.m.
Right.
So this says, well, I can go collect blood with the RAV4 there ready to be planted in. You know, a lot of strange thing happens around the RAV4 that pretty much everybody's explanation for is we're a bunch of idiots. Yeah, we threw a tarp over it. It was supposed to not touch the car, but it did. We took it off right before it rained. We were standing under the tarp. We weren't standing under. Who knows what was going on over there? We also know there's Slim Jim marks. There's some talk that the car was open when it got to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. Okay, so 3:58 p.m., Stevens' door is forced open. From that point on, everybody on the property, it's all law enforcement people, have access to Stevens' house. We know that Lieutenant Lenk was asked to search the bathroom at 8 p.m. He doesn't report finding any blood. We described last week that it's possible the blood's already been wiped up and it's not found until the Wisconsin State Crime Lab people go through with alternate light sources, phenolphthalein and luminol. But it's also possible Lieutenant Lenk was the one that's lifting the blood right there at 8 p.m. That would give him adequate time to go over, force his way into the car, maybe with the Slim Jim, and plant some blood. So they have the know-how, they have a reward, they have low risk, but they have limited opportunity to plant. So I really think the bigger window to plant is the 15-hour window. But they have an opportunity to get the blood and plant it very shortly afterwards on the 5th. Okay, we spent a lot of time on this table, so.
All right.
All right. Okay, this is actually going through what we talked through on the table, so we might have.
This one?
That one will just. That's the cigarette smoking man smoking the cigarette just to let Avery know he's on to him.
All right.
Okay, here's some of the Slim Jim evidence. Okay, so we already talked about this. This was all on that table. And this is the Slim Jim evidence on the driver's door. The one in the back is the most obvious. You can see the wiper edge
Yeah,
is pushed in, and it's badly cupped.
looks badly damaged. Right.
The middle circle call out is just for the scratch on the window, and there's a similar, less severe damage to the wiper edge in the long blue one. And these photos, I guess Erekose Banana, who's from the UK, I think. He was the one who brought this back to my attention, but I think there's somebody else who deserved the credit for having discovered this a long time ago, but it wasn't really fitting it into anybody's theories yet. Okay. So this wasn't our discovery. Just want to make sure everybody. And somebody claimed it wasn't Eric's. I'm trying to remember the name. Okay, so here's the evidence that Roel came up with out of the police reports. This one is showing Detective Rembeker and Steyer breaking into Stevens at 3:58. This is coming out of the Manitowoc County report. All right, if we go on. So they go, or it was 3:48. They actually leave at 3:58. And there's Lieutenant Lanks assigned to search the bathroom and laundry room at 20:06 minutes. That's
20:06. Yeah.
yeah, that's
That'd be
that's 8:06 p.m. and that's
right.
That's opportunity to plant. And then we also see.
Oh, sorry.
Let's look at the sink picture because I want to. Okay, so we've had these pictures for a while. So this one is showing 2 evidence stickers on the vanity top and 1 evidence sticker in the sink. That's on the right side of the bowl. These evidence stickers look like they're calling out nothing. So I always thought these were after stickers and that they had already collected the samples from these locations. But it looks like these may have been before pictures, and the residue is only visible under alternate light and luminol. But we would have to question certain very unreliable witnesses to get a straight story about any of that.
Right.
One of the things I noted, I thought it was a pretty big find at the time. A lot of people don't think it's all that important. Is that area of the evidence sticker in the sink seems to be on a portion of sink that looks clean.
Right.
But the rest of the sink, immediately to the left of it and under that sticker, looks filthy.
A lot of sub scum. And then it looks like there's some kind of a dark dot in there too. I'm wondering what that is, but anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. Could be fungus. Mold. Scraped off paint. Who knows? I guess they still have the sink. We could. Okay, so at the time, I didn't know we had Lenk accounted for. Lenk is less likely, but I put this together as just a humorous thing. If you look at the first picture, you really shouldn't look at them together because it.
Oh, I see your. Okay, yeah. There you go.
Okay, so I have a little remark here that this is a composite sketch developed with the benefit of an eyewitness, and that the picture is not traced. And of course, this is an allusion to Kushki's picture of Stephen. And we see that Lenk is holding some sort of cigarette-like object in his hand here. This is why we strongly suspect he might be the cigarette-smoking man. The second picture...
That's a punt. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
The second picture, another person gave to me, he said, boy, it looks just like Lenk. Okay, so... Can you believe that first one is a witness's sketch? Boy, that seems awful damning to me.
And you know what? That's probably the only one that witness has ever done. And then he framed it and put it on his office wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Kushki, he was quite a piece for.
For when you literally frame, you're framing.
Yeah.
Framing by framing.
Apparently, he was quite a character, and he would break into odd bits of Russian at times, you know, because he was quite a smart guy. But yeah, it's
Yes, he was
it was-
PhD in the old country before he was brought across.
yeah. Did he
not
not
supposed
die
to
of a
speak
heart
Russian.
attack? Sorry, did he not die of a heart attack just before Teresa went missing?
I'm not sure, but he definitely looked like he might be prone to doing that.
Yeah.
I hear he could down some vodka. Okay.
Yes. Now, I'm sure I read that in the
Oh.
Mike Peaceback book, which I must have put
All right,
on
so-
the bonfire earlier.
Let's
I can't see it anymore.
let's see the artwork here instead of the. I'm not sure what these. Okay. So I put together a montage of so Zellner's recreation. She shows people using things that are commonly found in an evidence toolkit: swabs, micropipette, and a scalpel to pull up blood from a sink. This is actually Stephen's sink removed from his house, but they definitely cleaned it some. So I think she's all along been pointing at the police here because of the choice of things she used to clean up the blood in the sink. All right, if we go to the next one.
Just a moment, Couchet, he died in 2007, so it was just before
the trial. Sorry,
Yeah, February 4th to be
Yeah.
precise.
just before the I remember, as I said, I remember reading it in Greaseback's book, and I must find out one or two bits about what he said about Jean Couchet. I always find that image of him and
I thought he gave a deposition.
Sorry?
He was deposed for the civil lawsuit. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, certainly. That was when he.
Where did
talked
it come
about,
from? That's
he wa-
all
he
I'm
was-
asking.
Oh yeah,
Where did it come from?
that would have been
Oh, my God.
November 2005. Okay,
Anyway.
yeah, I was getting my lawsuit.
Yeah, he was deposed in October, around about the middle of October. Yeah, 05. Yeah.
13th maybe.
Something like
And
that,
he
yeah.
talked about the DNA that could be created, fabricated, or whatever. I think.
Yeah, you should trust him. Don't believe any of that evidence.
Yeah.
His gut is,
Mhm.
you know,
That
he's the
pesky
one.
evidence, damn it.
He's the one that tracked down the Fuhrer.
What surprises me is how come he was even allowed to put that his drawing and Stephen Avery's photograph. How was he even able to keep that evidence and put it in his office?
They were all
Right.
celebrating it.
You know.
That was their big conviction.
And he was pretty much a big wheel, right? He was like one of the guys directly under Peterson.
Yeah,
I think so.
He was the second in command under
Right.
Kusurek, wasn't he? Mainly Kusurek, and then
And so
Yeah,
when you're that far up in the structure, you can get away with stuff. Just ask the Hod. Anyway.
yeah,
He was.
What Hod get away with?
The Hod, it's just
gets away with anything.
whenever I call the Hod, he's always telling me how he's just ducked the boss for 5 minutes and he's got 5 minutes. And it's always hilarious because he is the boss. And anyways, so,
Yeah.
you know. One of the things that makes Mark fun. The
Has to
Hod.
check to see if Mr. Otis in the back room is going to approve these discount he's
The
offering.
long distance charges? No.
Okay, so this is just I've been cropping this more because I've been trying to use it as a recreation of the actual crime that would have been committed, and it's just so full of blood when in the recreation video that I've just been cropping pieces out. But here we got the use of the swabs. Okay, and if you go over. And here's the use of the scalpel.
Right,
But,
to get flakes. Right.
Yeah, I just don't think that Stephen would have laid a whole array of drops, and so
No, not an array of them, but that's how you. I think
Yeah.
they just made a bunch to make sure they could get the idea of how to scrape it off and
No,
make
I
flakes.
I
but-
understand, but
yeah.
I
But I
have,
definitely don't think he made it look like that either.
I have different purposes for this now, so
Sure. No
sure,
worries.
I'm trying to show what it would look like. But we do have, he's got evidence collection gloves, an evidence scalpel, evidence
Yeah.
swabs, and they picked up the liquid with I think with micropipette or
Right.
it was okay. So here we got after that we would have Slim Jim the door. Yeah. So I've been
Sorry, you want to go back here?
I might cry. No, go the second one. I've been cropping out that the assistant handing in the blood swabs.
Right.
So I just get, and I have also brightened it. So people are asking me, where did you get that photo? It's like,
I doctored it.
it's
No,
just
I'm just
owners. I just try to make it look like the actual event instead of
Enhanced. That's the word.
yes. Well, I always admit where it's from, but okay, go on. And then of course there's the actual swab, which by golly, it looks like
Squiggle.
it was applied with a Q-tip.
Definitely does.
Because he's got a bone protruding out of his hand that looks just like a Q-tip.
To me, when you look at this thing up close, you can kind of see where it looks like a circle where they press down here at first. There's a circle. It looks like a circle where they had kind of like were pushing hard before they pulled away.
Yeah.
And then there's another little circle right here before they started this upward line. It totally looks like it's done with a Q-tip.
Yep, I think somebody did a recreation of it. Totally,
That's the last one there.
recreated the exact image pretty much. Okay.
Well, Magilla's taking his stab at rhyme and measure here. All right.
Well, that's just sort of our sign off on TikTok
Is
Manitowoc.
it? Oh.
You say TikTok what you proved, TikTok Manitowoc, and then TikTok. So,
Right.
it's just, okay, so this is just going in. I have a Twitter thread that I use to try to pull together all the evidence against the rogue Manitowoc Sheriff's Office personnel.
Right.
And the terrific three that seem to always show up when evidence is planted.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, so this was something I found that, so what happens is if you actually use a wedge in a Slim Jim, this is a way that a less skilled but faster way to do it for a less skilled individual. So you pound the wedge into the middle of the door to make room for the Slim Jim, and then you put the Slim Jim down. And what I've done is I've looked at what the police buy as what they call lockout kits to get in cars, and they always have these wedges with these Slim Jims. And the pattern on the door, I think this is best description of what the pattern looks like. There's major damage in the middle of the door, which would not be a good place to look for the linkage to the lock. But I think that's where they pounded in one of these spacer wedges.
Okay.
Okay, so
Oh, looks like that was the end of that thread.
that's yep. So that thread took us. Now those were early theories on the blood, but and we developed some. But if you just go back to the first slide for summary, which is the vote we got from the Twitter sphere. we tend to believe Stephen Avery, at least in the Twitter sphere, that the blood was there and went missing. After our analysis, we think it was a rogue Manitowoc County Sheriff's Officer, cop, or retired cop. It doesn't make sense for it to have been Ryan, even though we think Ryan is the prime suspect and the one we're assuming is the murderer when we did our analysis. And it doesn't make it much sense to be Bobby. But actually, this vote matched our thinking pretty good. But we still don't know exactly when it happened or where. There's multiple opportunities to collect and multiple opportunities to plant. But there certainly wasn't proven to be no opportunity, as stated in Zellner's paper. So, and I don't think she believes that. Maybe some people do, but I think that was due to legal strategy. Okay, so if we go back from this thread back to the collection. Okay, so that was the first talk. Let's see what we got. At that one. All right, let's just look at this one real quick. So, so this, it turns out, what the weather stripping looks like. So there's a solid rubber piece. This is the external weather stripping. There's some weather stripping on the inside of the window too. And I think we have a couple people who think that the push down part's on the inside of the window. And I leave that to somebody who actually has the car to work out. I think Zellner does. But that part, the reason we don't see the damage from the outside is that main rubber part that doesn't have the wiper edge, it never gets damaged, and it blocks the view of the inside wiper edge. So the way it's shown here isn't exactly how it mounts. It mounts on the side that's
furthest away, over here.
It's what's the best description? It mounts on that one of the long edges on the top of the door. So there's a slot in that big rubber piece. There's a slot down the middle. The slot goes. You're close. Not that piece. That's the wiper. So this black end, that's the wiper edge.
Right.
So that's what takes water up the window.
Right.
So the black end here. So if you point at the black end, there's a slot in there to mount it on a piece of metal on the top of the door, and right there you're at the top of the slot. And if you drop a line down, like at 225 degrees, so no, that's the wrong way. Or the other edge.
Go to this.
No, you mean the other long edge.
Here.
Yeah, so that's the edge that actually mounts on top of the door, the one you're pointing at there.
Okay. All right. Okay,
and the wiper edge is points up a little bit.
Right.
And when you bring the window up, it takes some moisture off the outside of the window.
Takes the dew off the outside, right?
And it's just rolled over here, and that big rubber piece that mounts on the top of the door is the piece we see from the outside. We can only see the damaged rubber edge from the inside.
Right.
Okay, now there is...
The part we see damaged is this bit.
Yeah.
That bit.
Well,
right there.
Yeah. And that's the part that actually is in contact with the window. Okay, so all right, this is another picture of those damaged spots. This one you can see the rubber edge. So if we look at the right side, just under the brown paper or tape. No, in the big picture.
Yeah.
The other piece of brown paper tape. Left side. Yeah.
Oh, you mean over here?
The other, well, yeah. If I had said the right thing, you probably would have had a better chance. You can see the divot there in the rubber. And that black piece behind that is that thicker rubber strip that mounts on the door. Okay, and then this one with the tape there, you can see those scratches in the middle a little better.
Oh, here, yeah.
Yeah, there's pretty clearly some scratches. Usually where you work the Slim Jim, the wedge is pretty easy to get in one movement, and the Slim Jim you have to keep moving up and down. And one of the reasons, there's two reasons why police don't like to use Slim Jims anymore. One is they're more likely to damage the window and door, but the other one is when you actually use a Slim Jim inside the door, modern cars have a lot more wiring.
Electronics, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, a long time ago, all you had was like mechanical parts in the door.
Right.
And then we started having electric door windows and locks, and now everybody's got all sorts. And now we have, stereo speakers.
Speakers are in the door and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's real easy to be trying to grab that linkage bar and pull some wires free. And then, I don't know, it might cost $50. Get somebody to repair your door. And here we see the car from the outside, so that you can see that it looks clean. But that's really just that piece of rubber that doesn't contact the window.
Right. We can't see the damaged part from here, right?
Right, at any time. At one time, I thought it was proving that there wasn't damage, but that was false. So I wish I could just delete all those tweets easily, but Twitter is sort of like immutable.
Writing too many, I think.
So I'm trying to tell you
just think of it like math, and you're just showing your work.
Yeah, I'm continuously showing my work, and well, I mean, a lot of times I have to put that work out there to get the feedback about what's wrong. So
right.
Yeah, the feedback from our other researchers is very important.
Yes, indeed.
Sometimes not always said in the nicest way, but a lot of times it's fine. Okay, so you roll down a little bit more. Okay, so this is the other finding. Okay, so here is a picture of the RAV4 taken by Pam Sturm. You might recognize all the trees and the stuff, debris on top of the car.
Right.
You can see that strange.
From it being cleverly hidden. Anyways, sorry. Go ahead.
Is that how she described it? Yeah. Yes. They were disguising it as a tree.
It stuck out like a sore thumb.
Wouldn't anybody walking by just think it was a tree?
Cleverly hidden. I think that was what Colburn said about the key.
Yes.
Oh, that's yeah. Well.
Oh, but the key was cleverly.
Well,
hidden.
they still made a big deal about the attempts to hide the RAV. Although I don't think they were really attempts to hide it.
Yeah,
they were attempts to make it stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, well, not covering the wheel cover that said RAV4 in letters 2 feet tall. That was sort of a big omission.
It, disguised or something like that.
Yeah, they could have just removed that wheel cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one speculation, isn't there, that they covered it with branches and stuff to hide it from the air rather than from the horizontal, as it were, so that it couldn't be, when they did the flyover, they couldn't see it.
Well,
I thought it was
the RAV4 on the spare wheel. Wouldn't that stick out also from a helicopter?
Well, it's.
Well, they didn't bring a helicopter, so and they didn't bring a camera.
Plane, yeah. We've got a lot of footage missing, haven't we? From
it's like the only clear stills are when there's just accidentally the camera's held still.
Yeah.
It's like out of every 40 frames, there's like one clear still because even if you just continuously try to shake it every once in a while, your arms are going to be...
just the wrong place, yes, and you get a good picture.
Oh, wow, we got a good one there. And that's shaking, that's shaking. Unbelievable. Okay, so if we go on, this is a zoom in on that point. So this is where I think there's damage to the corner of the rear door on the driver's side. We can see that the rubber seal or gasket, I think they call it a rubber seal in the parts manual, has been pulled away from the door, and the door looks like it's not flush with the body. So if we go back to the first picture, you can see how tight the door is in the driver's door. Can you just scroll back to the one on the left, please, dude? So if you look at the middle bracket, you can see that the doors they're totally aligned and clean between the driver's door and the front edge of the rear door.
Right.
But you get to this one and it's pulled away, and the rubber seal is pulled off the door.
Right.
Okay, so to go on, this gives you. I left all this stuff on there so you could find it on the internet if you were interested. But when you use a Big Easy tool, which is different than a Slim Jim, and it's the new preferred tool for law enforcement, the first thing you do is you pry the corner of that doorway with that
little
wedge.
bag that fills up with air.
Yeah.
Well, first you pry the doorway with the wedge, then you slide the bag in, then you pump the bag up.
Pump the bag up, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I had AAA use that method once to help me get into my car.
Yep, and then I think the next slide will show you how the Big Easy stick fits into this whole mess. So here we got the wedges holding the doorway, we got the pumped up airbag, and we got the door partially open, and we're sliding the Big Easy stick in.
Mm-hmm.
And the Big Easy stick just operates the manual door lock.
Right. It's like you push the automatic locks like a finger.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't depend on going inside the door, which is the thing they like about it. So it looks like the rear door somebody was doing this to. The front door somebody was using a wedge and a Slim Jim. I think if you get one lockout kit, you get one of each of these things. And most police carry these things around to. They don't in general like to do that for civilians if they don't have to. They'll make you call a tow truck, but they do tend to have one. And okay, so that's our evidence that the RAV4 looks like it might have been broken in. It getting broken into again is exculpatory in this theory for Ryan planting the blood, because Ryan would have had the key to the car. The only ones who don't have the key to the car at this point are law enforcement again. So, happy days.
I was going to say the one person that does have the key to the car is Stephen Avery, so it wouldn't be him using his breaking into car gear, would it?
It's exculpatory for Steve. Well, Stephen didn't plant the blood against himself.
Well, according to the rest of the
and he had no reason to break into the car. Under
Yeah.
the theory put forth by the state, he had no reason to ever break into the car.
He wouldn't have a need to. Exactly. That's what Paul was getting at.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So who broke in that case?
Under the state's theory?
Oh, and Travis, by the way, nobody in this situation owned a Range Rover, but thanks. That's
Don't worry. Ryan talked around with the people in the family and found out that the car had been broken into a long time ago, but nothing was stolen. But they made an insurance claim and just collected the money.
right.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah. That was supposed to be humor. Yeah. Okay. So
it's wasted on this lot, I can assure you.
Oh.
Okay. So what were we gonna go?
Hey, Ron.
So,
Sorry. Go ahead, buddy.
Oh, we're gonna go to planting, right? No, deleting emails, right? So,
Oh, yes.
okay, this is an older talk. To go to deleting emails, I think you have to.
Go out of this.
Yeah, I don't think I put it in there because I have to use TweetDeck that adds to that, and I've been avoiding TweetDeck. So, you can't get to my bookmarks. Huh? Let me just. I'll get it real fast and give it to you.
You can share your screen if you want.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that.
Fair enough.
Something to hide.
Mr. Peebles might find out where you are.
Yeah, it's not you guys I'm worried about.
No worries. That's fine.
Let's see. We're looking for what's the topic we're looking for? It's not
Deleted
Ryan's
emails.
beer. That was a. Okay, you're looking for the voicemails.
Yes.
Oh, and I do have another phone records thing. So okay, so we'll do a quick one on the voicemails. Okay, so I'll put this in the messenger window. Is that good for you?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
All right, so that's one.
That's one comes through. Yep, I heard the ping. I've got my headphones turned up full volume.
Okay, and then this is a good one to follow it with. These will be little talks, but they're a little bit of fun.
Okay. I'd say we're coming up right about on the sweet point of 1:30. So.
Okay, so we'll just do these 3 little talks. Let's see.
Sorry, 1:30 what?
Hour and 30.
No, an hour and 6.
I said we're coming up. Never mind. Jesus. Hey, come on, Haver.
Can I just point out something that was mentioned along the way, and that is that when it comes to cigarette smoking man,
Yep.
Could it be that somebody didn't actually smoke in the caravan, in the trailer, but just the fact that they're a regular smoker could have caused that smell to be left? If you're not a smoker, I can assure you, if Eunice has a smoker in the car that doesn't smoke in the car, but even if she's just been sat in that car, and that person's been there, as soon as I get in the car next day, I smell it straight away, and I can say to her, "Oh, Kirsty's been in the car."
Because they would reek of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Coat.
And also, I was going to point out that for somebody that smokes regularly and is with other people that smoke regularly, is it not a case that they don't sort of smell the smoke, do they? So somebody could easily go in there smoking and never even think that for one moment that somebody's going to notice that they were there, because that is just their natural smell all around them.
Right. Well, what do they call it? Nose blind, or they go nose blind to their own odor. Yep. I think those are all possibilities.
Sure.
I'm not sure we've identified anybody that smokes that often yet. So.
Well, I was going to say there's certainly Mr. Tariq that smokes constantly on every moment you ever see him. He's got a cigarette in his hand. So,
okay, well, yep, that's very possible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why Scott is a minor suspect, though. I mean, there's no evidence that he knew Teresa at all, ever. So, and he also he was having a pretty normal heterosexual relationship with Barb at the time. It's just it's something to remember, though. Yeah.
It's to me it sometimes seems like there's so many players in this, and I realise that at times you can get sort of hooked on the theory that it's one person, when in actual fact it could have been this perfect storm of various people doing nefarious things at certain times that has resulted in this. Yeah. And it's just trying to nail down what were the police
in the all compasses point north situation. Yeah.
he would have had the same motive as Bobby to just go in that trailer and see if he saw anything.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity.
Or maybe pressure was put
Well, this is really
on
early.
certain individuals to do things, you know.
Yeah, well, that would still be law enforcement putting the pressure on.
Yeah.
But he'd be in there at 8 o'clock on the 3rd, so I mean the story's barely broke at that point. But he's probably heard that Stephen might have been involved.
Yep.
So I would say if he was around, he's as good a theory as anybody for going in there and maybe that not being when the blood was collected. Or maybe he collected the blood and gave it to police. You know, we just we didn't solve the blood, but I think we gave it a good look, and I think we told a story about what we found. So,
Right.
Yeah.
I do think you go through all the Slim Jim marks, and you go through the opportunities, and
Right.
you look at the
There's
spunk
enough
evidence
suggestion.
about the sink, and you start thinking that you know, why are these evidence planting policemen hanging around the sink all the time? And it starts looking a lot more likely than the story about Ryan.
Right.
Okay, so we just got some 1 or 2 slide ones. One of the things I was trying to do, I went through the voicemail argument that Zellner had in the Ryan Denny filing, and it was really convoluted, and I don't think it was very effective because of that. So I tried to just put together first a real simple explanation of, you know, what's wrong with Ryan's story. So basically, Fassbender, he listens to these voicemails on the 16th, and he writes down what they all are and puts it in a report.
Mm-hmm.
So between voicemail message 7 and 8, 7 is on November 1st at 5, and 8 is on November 2nd at 7:12 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Between those, Ryan calls. He has a strange call on Teresa's record. It's only 4 seconds long. On his record, it's 1 minute long. But his record is only accurate to a minute and doesn't show any zeros, so it looks like it just rounds up.
Rounds up to a minute for every call, right?
Yeah. So we don't really know. The 4 seconds is very strange. That's a very short call.
I believe I might be able to give you an explanation for that. I did a video about this a while back. The message that you would get from Teresa if her phone was not on Singular's network at the time had this thing of, oh, the caller you were trying to reach is not available at the moment or whatever. It was like a very cheesy, very common message that you would hear.
Yeah.
And it was about 4 seconds long. So that might be why. That might explain it. Just so you know.
Okay. Well,
something to look into anyway.
Yeah. Well, so he's claiming he got that voicemail full. And then we get 3 more messages after him. And then Tom Pierce reports getting a voicemail full November 2nd around noon. And the reason he's doing that is she's missing an appointment at work. And he remembers the time pretty well because she's missing this appointment. People are showing up and she's not there.
Right.
It was something like a women group of, well, something.
It's in his 2005 statement, I think.
Yeah.
Or it might be in his testimony. No. But what we have here is basically if Ryan had a voicemail full and a message is left at 7:12 a.m., then somebody had to make space between his call and that call. Now there's 2 possibilities. Either someone accessed the voicemail and deleted messages, or it's possible that something aged out. On the,
Right.
there's
Got so old that it was automatically by the automation of the cell phone company. It was old enough. It was just erased.
right.
Is what
So
you're suggesting.
we
Okay.
looked, and her account should have aged out in 14 days. So this would be a message being kept on November 1st from the 17th, which would have been back before her Christmas party in Green Bay.
Okay.
If it aged out, if somebody got in there and deleted the message, it could have been from any time between the 17th and the 1st.
Right.
Okay, so another thing that happened, I think in Pierce's testimony, before you get to this,
Sorry.
let me just add one more thing. Pierce said, actually, I think Ryan said this, it's very unlike Teresa to not answer her calls. She uses her phone for business, and it's very unlike Teresa to not answer her calls very quickly. So the idea that she had old calls in here is a little bit contradicted by evidence. I will say there's another piece of evidence that puts the 14 days in suspicion. That who is it? Fassbender is doing this on the 16th, and all these calls from the 1st should be deleted already.
Mhm.
If the 14-day call thing, and there's 7 calls that should have been deleted if Fassbender accesses it on the 16th. So I did hear, not here, but I checked some sites, and they say this auto deletion. Usually it'll warn you something's going to be auto deleted and give you one more chance to save it.
Right.
Also, every time you listen to it, it gives you a chance to save, and the 14 days gets reset.
Right.
You're given the chance to delete it or save it. When you save it, it tells you this message will be kept for 14 days or something. You probably remember that from some old phone you had.
Right. I do recall that back in the 90s, late 90s and early 2000s, that it was like that.
Yeah. So so it looks like either somebody got in there. Now, the question is, we haven't found a way that somebody could have deleted voicemails without a phone call being recorded somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So even Teresa's phone calling that voicemail got recorded. You'll remember that was in her phone records a lot. So it's possible. It's also possible on November 1st at 6. This actually should have said 6:42 too. This is a mistake, and I tried to clean it up. All right, if we go to the next art, are you okay there, dude?
I'm fine.
Okay, looking good. If you go to the next artwork now. Okay, so this, I had found, this is the actual instructions that were entered into trial in Exhibit 380.
Right.
And unfortunately, they're a little hard to read, but if you look at the bottom row, it says, press your 10-digit phone number, wireless number.
Right.
2 says, press asterisk when you hear
When the greeting begins.
And then 3 says, enter your personal
Passcode.
passcode. Right?
Yeah.
Passcode instead of a PIN.
And then follow the voice prompts.
Right. So this is pretty easy if you know somebody's passcode to call this thing from another number. All you do is you call that person, and then as soon as you hear it begin, like within 4 seconds or so, you hit an asterisk. You'd enter a personal code. Now, I think hers was probably 0322.
Combination of her sister's birthdays?
No, that's actually her birthday.
No.
And her password on GoDaddy.com was T0322. We know that from the computer dump. That was something that Mike Hallbach set up for her. So he knew that.
Right.
the whole story about the combination of the sisters' password birth dates doesn't make any sense to me at all, because it's only 4 digits.
Yeah.
So I think somebody took that path who knew that passcode. This is from Singular for her phone, her account. There's the instructions. This isn't guessing from somebody else's.
Right. Entered a trial. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's that.
So, yeah, I gave you a couple more that have to do. I did do. We can't quite remember who to credit this to. Somebody in a FOIA request. I think it might have been Eric the Banana Man. Did I stay in there?
He's just down the road from me. He's just across the border.
Somebody FOIA'd a lot more Stephen's phone records. We only had a narrow window into Stephen's phone records. So I did some quick analysis and had some good findings. So if we, what we'll do is just read my findings, and then I'll show it to you in the listings. So I looked at his phone log. So, we looked heavily at Ryan's phone log during this period. And I came up with a pretty good story to fit it. Stephen's phone log from Halloween through the 11/4 seemed highly exculpatory. Every incoming call that occurs during this period, he answers. The only unanswered calls are outgoing from him, and some of them the person calls back a few seconds later. So he's just calling, somebody in his family, and they call him back, but they didn't pick up the phone when he called. Also, there's cell tower data in here that verifies that he's near his home the vast majority of the time. So he's not doing anything mysterious. There's no strange calls with law enforcement.
Right.
Also, the third thing is he makes early morning calls. 7:35 a.m. is pretty early, the day after Teresa's visit. So if we pull up the first window, you can see answered, not answered here, but you have to see that the not answered originated with his phone, which I probably didn't give enough columns there, but I verified that all the non-answered were him dialing out. He answers every incoming call. The other thing is we can see that if we start with line 85, we can see his last call on Halloween was at 9:20 in the evening. He tried to call somebody and they didn't answer. And then, so let's say he goes to bed then. Let's say that's 9:30. And then he's making a call at 7:30 the next morning, which is 10 hours later. So maybe he got up an hour before he made the phone call. Maybe he stayed awake an hour after, got a good 8 hours sleep. I mean, the 10 hours is a very normal interval for that. There's nothing suspicious about that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and the second one just shows all the cell phone tower data. I'll have to make it. It's not as simple as just pointing to the numbers, but 3701, 3681, there's a number of ones that are his home tower that show up for the vast majority of the calls. It also shows him like going to Green Bay and things he said he did.
You mean more proof that Stephen's telling the truth?
More proof that Stephen's. Yep. So we know we went to Menards near Green Bay, so that's the one. If we go to the other, and then we'll finish up.
Oh.
Yeah, you have to go back.
Yeah.
I think the other thing we already went through it. I think it's just that there's a 10-hour gap, but I contrast it with the 17.5-hour gap in Ryan's phone records.
You okay, dude?
I just had to. I don't leave it up while I navigate because for the same reason Magilla didn't want to share his screen.
Yeah. It's just that we heard that faint sort of moan, and I thought maybe you'd hurt yourself.
Moan. Okay.
Groan or something.
All right.
Okay.
So this mad Scotsman keeps saying I'm grumpy. So maybe I don't know. Anyway.
Okay, so this is just making a bigger point about the last point I made.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, if you remember from the working theory of what Ryan did, the last thing he does is call Scott Blodorn at 7:47. They talk for 5 minutes. I think he's checking to make sure Scott Blodorn didn't notice anything suspicious at the house under this working theory.
Right.
And then he doesn't make another call until 1:31 p.m. the next afternoon. So he's not talking on the phone for 17 hours and 40 minutes. I'll also remark he comes back and makes some phone calls to Madison about nursing, and then he goes off the grid for another 15 hours. Wow. So he's unaccounted for close to 34 hours in the first 2 days out of 48. But that's all circumstantial, and that's okay. So I think we covered the planned topics.
All right, so we open it up for questions.
Yep.
All righty. Anybody you got questions for Magilla regarding his presentation, or maybe even past ones, perhaps?
Well, starting off with T-Bone,
we'll let the Mad Scotsman go first.
Yeah, he had a $20 bet with everyone that the dude was going to be late. But I think he backed the fact that it was going to be the dude. So I think he's lost his $20.
That's what I thought too. But
yeah, I think yeah.
But he was like celebrating the W, so I just was like, all right, well, it makes you feel better.
Yeah, Mooseman is concerned that there's reports of a Dr. Pepper shortage, but maybe you've stocked up and the rest of the world, well, they can just whistle, you know.
Whistle for it. That's right.
Collected blood. Conrad Pete Bates. He does point out that as far as the blood collection was concerned, it would need to be somebody who could get past Bear.
Bear,
the dog.
Oh, Bear.
So,
okay.
Suggesting it was Bobby.
Not as in he had to go and collect it in the news.
I want to just say we have some video evidence of strangers taking photographs of the burn pit while Bear's there, and he like licks his paw and lays on the ground.
He's a big softie. You see him lying around, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard this thing like he's this mad barking, vicious.
Yeah.
There's also a picture of him planting, a big long tongue on Jody.
Yeah,
that we showed the other day.
Yep.
I don't know about Bear, but it's not really clear that Bear was all that big a problem. I have talked to an expert dog handler who said that if he came in there to do scent trails and there was a dog there and they couldn't get it out of there, he would have removed it himself, and he thought the whole thing was absurd. So
yeah,
that's what I thought. That it took them that long that nobody in Wisconsin knows how to handle a dog.
Yeah, I got that.
I mean,
I don't know that directly. I got that from Scooby, but
yeah. I just always thought that was ridiculous too.
Yeah,
it's funny enough. Scooby was asking who's Kathy. We've got Kathy Williford. And,
Kathy Williford.
And another Kathy. And as Travis pointed out, we've got one spelt with a C, one Kathy with a C, and one Kathy with a K. So we're trying to figure out if it's the same person. But if it is, it's the person that was ex-DOJ in the narcotics unit that worked alongside Deb and Amy of DOJ, and she was the auto trader photographer before Teresa Holbach came on the scene.
Judging all the typos in queso, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a typo and it is the same person.
Yeah. Another question: the KZ billboards rewards. KZ pointing out that that two is it two people keep cropping up, and who are those two people
Yeah, nice question.
that keep cropping up? I took that as meaning Bobby and Scott, but of
No.
course I'm pairing them together. But of course, as a lot of people have said, it could be X and Y. It could be.
I'm pretty sure it's Ryan and Bobby, is how I read it. The two Denny suspects.
Isn't it interesting how we both interpret it in a
Well, I happen to know that she's received some tips about Ryan, so from a certain gorilla in a pet store.
Mr. Peebles, yes, exactly. So yeah, I was just going to.
The other one she receives tips about is of course Bobby, but same two people, Bobby and Ryan. Not that they're working together, so it's either the one or the other. But
I took it to mean that her working theories have been on the right two suspects.
Right.
I think if she only had one suspect, you'd see a change in her filing behavior.
Okay, so Juliet asks, why isn't Stephen's Grand Am looked at more in regards to getting blood to plant? Hard to say what their decision making was, but they do have pictures of the Grand Am, so they were aware of it. Your thoughts?
I've heard the Swabs swap story, but I mean, we have photographs of the blood in the RAV4. I guess the blood could have been planted at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. In terms of, possibility versus probability, the people I think are most probable of planting evidence are the ones tied up in the long-term grudge with Stephen and the $36 million lawsuit. And that
don't forget the upcoming depositions.
Yeah, the upcoming deposition. And everything I'm hearing is that there's misinformation about how, they weren't worried about anything and their insurance company had told them they would cover it. I mean, what I'm hearing from people more in the know is there was a lot of just raw animus, and these people hated the Averys. So they didn't even need the lawsuit the first time. And think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it wasn't anything to do with the money, really. Although that would have irritated law enforcement in Manitowoc. It was a fact that there was going to be this Avery bill. There's going to be this law in Wisconsin named after Stephen Avery. This dude from a scrapyard. What on earth? Do they think they're doing? This guy needs to be taken out.
Yeah, there's a fact I just re-triggered in my mind this week. Was the Avery bill actually passed on November 1st, 2005.
But renamed the Criminal Justice Reform, or words to that effect, wasn't it?
Well, it's
they changed the name of it.
Basically, the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office was the poster child for wrongful convictions in Wisconsin at that time.
Yeah.
It was a huge humiliation.
Yeah.
Everybody involved in that office, whether they were involved in depositions or worrying about the $36 million liabilities, would have been involved in having animus against Stephen.
Yeah,
right.
And also it caused huge forgetfulness on behalf of some of the people being deposed. I mean, you listen to, you read Mark Roher's deposition. He can't remember anything. And what I find really bizarre is that he had all these important meetings with the sheriff's department. Peg Leitzelager up in Madison. He goes to all these meetings, nothing minuted.
So
Nothing minuted.
I was told by a trial lawyer once that I would make a terrible witness. And they said the first thing they'll do is they'll tell everybody how smart you are.
Yeah.
And then if you ever tell them that you don't remember something, they won't believe you.
Yeah.
And what makes you a great witness is when you can say, I don't remember something, and they believe you. And you say something like, I was there, but I don't recall what was said. And you just think, well, that sounds just like him.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
All right. William, sorry, go ahead. All right. So William asks, did they ever find out who deleted her messages? To which I believe the answer is no, but go ahead.
Well, maybe Kratz found out.
All right.
Well, who's head of the suspect list? I would say Ryan is pretty high up there.
yeah, because he broke into her other phone records. And
Well, I mean, having had that personal relationship with her, you know, he would probably, you know, have been, although her and Teresa and Ryan were no longer together, the fact that, you know, they had that personal relationship, I'm sure there are things between Teresa and Ryan that nobody else knows anything about.
yeah, I also think we have evidence that the passwords she kept were what I'd call the naive stage of making passwords.
Yeah.
They were just easy things for her to remember.
Yeah. So it was 0322.
I think her birthday was March 22nd, and she used 0322 quite a bit.
I mean, even I can remember that, you know. It's,
Well, but I think people go through naive stages in learning how passwords work, and then something happens.
Yeah.
You know, and then they go through a stage of you know, learning a hard password probably.
I think it was the birthday of her sisters or something like that.
well, that's what Ryan
they
tried to say.
testified to, but the one I know is from the GoDaddy account that her brother set up for her. It was in an email from Mike that he said, I was setting up your website and all. And it's from GoDaddy, and it says your account name is Teresa22 and your password is lowercase t0322. And you know, that sounds like, you know, Mike knew her password, and that's what she probably used at that point in her life.
Right.
Also, this is only 2005, so even, you know, cyber awareness is not that high around the world yet.
Right.
Travis asked a question about how, you know, are we an idea how many phones she had and how many accounts she had?
Well, we're only aware of one landline and one phone, but you know, the burn. We have some unidentified burner phones, perhaps, that have, you know, been found. I don't see any strong evidence that she was doing anything on the side that required a secret phone.
Yeah. Like a burner phone, like some of these we hear about all the time, don't we? That people need.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't have somebody to hide an affair from, so I mean, that's the main reason, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so to address one strand in the RAV here, yes, I believe you're right. One strand, yes. In my phones, I was able to hit a menu button. It would bring up a list, and one of those options was voicemail, where it would call my voicemail for me. So, yes, there was that ability. I remember.
She had long one dialing, so she holds the one key in long, and it would call her voicemail from her.
There you go, then. Okay. So
That was in her account, but it showed up on her phone records as her calling voicemail, and all those calls are there.
right,
You remember going through on the singular report.
right.
One other thing, just to mention, was that Daisy Lady pointed out that when it came to the blood by the ignition key, I'm sure that you and I do remember that Ali did a recreation of the blood by the ignition because she had a Toyota car. You remember that? No.
You're asking me?
You mean showing that her knuckles didn't hit the panel? Right?
You remember Ali did a recreation video. One of Ali Apperson's videos was of her putting the key in the ignition, trying to get blood onto the. No, okay.
I've tried to do that with mustard on my finger.
Yeah.
And Zellner tried to do that.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I remember Zellner. Yeah.
Yeah, Zellner did it. I think she had 15 people try to do it, or 13.
Yeah.
I think. I think all the arguments about the blood looking like it was planted from the expert in the RAV4 are valid, but I think showing opportunity and knowing the source is going to strengthen that.
Yeah, well, Nick Stalker was kind of vague, wasn't he? You know, he wasn't really much of an expert. His expertise was in handwriting, but they had him in as this blood expert. You know, and what they said was, yes, it could have been done with a fingertip doing that, but it could have just as easily been done with any other applicator. I think was the term that Dean Strang used, and really it was a sort of point that you really want, you know, somebody to come in with a bit more expertise to actually look at, you know, how the hell did that mark get there? You know, well, how would it have been done with a finger? Can you replicate that with a finger? You know, and not just take an expert's opinion. Did he actually try it out, or is it just his opinion that it could have been done like that?
Well, I think it's the cross examinations were just way too soft, and then,
exactly, yes, yeah.
And then the lack of expert testimony for the defense allowed these people to seem like they were making definitive statements all the time.
Yeah.
Well, it does look like we have our dog handler in here today in the chat, by the way.
Excellent.
So, folks, you can be looking forward to Obi-Wan, Canine Handler, and I getting together at some point here in the future to talk about the doggies, the pups. Really, really cool guy who actually is a handler for probably one of the coolest dogs I think I've ever seen. And very, very good at what she does. So you guys can probably look forward to that. See if there's any other questions here. Is there any way to find out about any car accidents and crashes in the area, possibly involving the RAV, before Halloween of 2005? Maybe that ended up at Peterson Salvage. Peterson, or you mean Herman? Herman and his family owned a salvage yard. I'm thinking maybe that's what you meant.
In Cleveland.
Cleveland Auto Salvage, right. So as far as I know, people would have probably already been looking into that. We would have probably already know about every single fender bender in the area. It would have probably already been dug up. I don't recall anything ever being mentioned about it other than Ricky, but that wasn't a RAV4. But, you know. Let's see. Let's see. Looks like that's all the questions. Any more questions, folks, before we bid you adieu?
No, that was all the ones that I made a note of. I think I've gone through everything that I made a note of. Yep.
All right. So Scooby says, "Good job, Magilla."
Yeah. Well done. And
Daisy Lady has a question about Paul Metz.
Oh yes.
Okay.
But
We'll wait
what's
for
the
Daisy Lady
question, Daisy Lady?
We'll wait for her question.
Yeah. Was it already earlier in the chat?
I don't think so. I've been looking.
Well, of course, we're talking down the road, aren't we?
We wouldn't end it before she could type it. I'm guessing. That's why she put that real quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking Zander Road, aren't we? And Paul Metz being the guy that, Erekose, you tell us about Paul Metz.
Well, he's apparently recanted
Yeah.
he has said that his words were misrepresented by the law enforcement officials. It's what he's saying. So, but the way it went back then, according to the officer that made the report, is Paul Metz was saying that he smelled a body burning or a foul smell from 4.5 miles south, directly due south at Avery Salvage, which was just comical, really. But it turns out that it was actually the property right next to him.
And the wind
It wasn't even a mile away. I think it was literally, it might have been a half a mile away. Might have been a half a mile, but yeah. So
there you go.
Yeah, the wind wasn't even in that direction from the salvage yard.
Yeah, there you go. Daisy Ladies has come back with.
I have one quick thing too.
Fire away.
Statement to KZ.
Erekose. That's so nice.
I went to
Erekose. You're Erekose.
Eric Rosie.
that has KZ, but then he passed away on June 19th at 61. Okay, I wasn't aware he passed away. Okay, interesting. So he passed away basically like when we were all at Raleigh last year, is what you're saying. I hadn't heard that, but that's interesting, I guess. But he gave his affidavit already, so fortunately, he didn't die before doing that. So he clearly came out saying that the officer, I think it was, who was it, Hawking or something, that came out. Well, whoever it was that came out to see him. And he's claiming that officer didn't take his statement correctly, that he never suggested that the smell was coming from Avery Salvage, and a lot of things that he mentioned in that frame of mind. So, he at least he did that before passing. But R.I.P.
Yep.
All right, I have one more thing.
Yep.
I guess a bunch of people on Twitter might have saw that Sandy was trying to reach me today. And it turns out that Stephen's going to be in isolation due to the virus.
Right.
And that means he doesn't have access to a television or anything. And she asked me to send him a set of printouts of the Louvre Science Reddit post. So I'm going to be mailing that tomorrow, and you can just think that Stephen's going to be learning my theories about descent dog tracks.
There you go.
That's good.
That's one way to get it to Zelda.
Yeah.
Probably sent it to Zelman. He's heard about it, but
Right, I'm sure.
But
these little talks we're having on Sunday are more than just a little bit popular. So
yes. Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. Some of these law enforcement officers involved are actually quite old at the moment. Do you think maybe with coronavirus hitting, some could actually pass away for long?
I wouldn't wish anybody death by
coronavirus. Not wishing it, just recognizing the real possibility, right?
Strictly as a mathematics answer, I would say.
I fear they will pass away before they can actually confess what they did. Yeah, right. Come clean.
Well, I don't think Colburn's that old.
No.
Well, then again, there's no other motivator like the fear of your own mortality.
Remaker's not that old.
You know.
I think somebody will be around to be the face of the bad boys.
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's almost like Well, if the rest of them fade away, so what? As long as Steve and Brendan get out,
Oh yeah.
Right.
you know, that's if they've got secrets to hide, then maybe yes, they will go to the grave with them. But as long as Kathleen Zellner can get this evidentiary hearing and show exactly what's bogus, and I mean it's you wonder, don't you? The state are so adamant about not giving her certain evidence. They thought that giving her, well, the bullet, it wasn't to test, was it? It was just to look at.
Yep.
Yeah, she wasn't allowed to test anything on the bullet. She was only allowed to look at it. And even just looking at the bullet.
Wait,
She got to bounce electrons off it.
Yeah, but that's really just looking at it, isn't it?
Well, it's pretty useful.
Yeah, very, very useful. Yeah, but I mean, was she able to extract some of the waxy substance to try and determine where that came from?
No, but
so that would be the sort of testing I would suggest.
well, if we were actually trying to solve the case,
Yes, yeah. They've given us stuff to look at, but they've not given it really to test. And let's dig up this RAV4. Let's see where that is. Let's give us that to test. What have they got to hide?
plenty.
Exactly.
Obviously,
Yeah.
I think if the Wisconsin State Crime Lab doesn't get pulled down in it, the state attorney general's office may not fight so hard.
Yeah, I think for me the big problem with Sherry Culhane is the fact that we hear that Tom Fassbender is sending her a message, try and put her in his garage. Well, when it comes to state testing, should it not be the case that there should be blind testing? That people testing this stuff, they should have no idea what this case is about, should they?
Right.
That's if you're in search of the truth.
Exactly.
Should be double blind.
Yeah.
Yep. And there also probably should be 2 separate laboratories involved. So
Yeah.
Yeah, with a counter expertise or something like that.
but
I think that's why Dean Strang and Jerry Butin set up their what was it called again, dude? The Center for Integrity and Science.
The Center for the Integrity of Forensic Sciences.
just remember, I've been taught this. I've had a career in R&D my whole life, and I've been taught that the perfect research costs infinite money.
Yeah.
So there are some practical trade-offs that have to happen.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be the wild, wild west.
Yes.
And it's good to know what the perfect research would look like so that you don't compromise too much.
Absolutely.
All right.
I saw a comment from somebody asking me if the chair is secure. Yes, it's pretty secure. Don't worry.
They want to see you tip over.
Yeah, I don't think they were suggesting that for one moment. They were just worried that it wasn't as secure as it might be.
Right. All right. So the question is, Magilla, you got more material for next week or?
Yeah, I think we probably have enough for one more, and
one more. Right.
And I'm still hoping for. I'm hoping to hear back from some of the hands-on dog handling experts.
Right.
So if you could set any of that up, that'd be great.
Okay. Maybe we can arrange something for Sunday with our good friend Obi-Wan K9 Handler. So anyway.
Keep in mind, daylight saving time starts in that weekend. So I think it's going to be 1 hour earlier than.
For you?
No, it's
for everybody.
For the USA. It will be 1 hour earlier.
Okay.
We'll go back to
the same time for Paul. And for
I thought our time already changed. So
yeah, it'll be 3 and 9.
Changed, yeah.
Yeah, but we'll be synced up again. We'll both be on daylight savings.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
In other
Yeah.
words, yeah. Sorry. At the moment, dude, you are 7. I am 7 hours ahead of you. I
Yeah.
will go back to being where I used to be, which was 8 hours ahead of you. But then sometimes I'm light years ahead of you, so I will.
Yeah. So you think anyway.
Yeah.
Legend in your own mind.
Then he gets in that spaceship of his.
It's time
So-
machine.
All right. So there you go,
What-
folks.
What,
You
do
can
you
look.
think? What do you think, guys? Will be the situation with the corona in 7 days? In 7 days, very, very much can change.
My outlook here, at least for my little Hampshire, where I live here, is very good. I have seen all week how Southern Californians, Angelinos, have really been taking the social distancing seriously. There's really nobody out. There's the freeways are clear. I mean, eerily clear compared to what they are normally like here in LA. I went down yesterday. I had to go on an emergency call for somebody's internet. Just happened to be down at the shopping and restaurant district down in Manhattan Beach. Complete ghost town. People are totally taking this seriously, trying not to gather in groups because they know that's the way that this thing will spread the quickest.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty proud and pretty happy with the way that people here are observing the social distancing and really taking care about having contact with too many other people.
I wish it would be the same in the Netherlands, but to be honest, it's not.
Really?
There are so many photos of people standing in groups right next to each other, not keeping their distance. And
Right.
we had beautiful weather this weekend. So on Saturday, all they went outside, all the people, and you could literally walk on the heads of those people. It was crowded, and I couldn't understand a thing about it. And there was not one police officer saying anything about it or urging them to keep their distance or whatever. But today they made a better job of that. So the mayors of the big cities said, don't go to the beach, don't go there, don't, and they actually closed down some ways to the beach. And the nature walks were closed and something like that.
Right.
So it was a bit better today, but I don't understand. We are on the Italian scenario at the moment. So I don't understand why we're not yet in lockdown. Somehow the Dutch government thinks we're going to make it. We're going to do better than the Italians, but somehow without that lockdown,
Right.
I can't understand.
Yeah, I did a video yesterday showing what it's like here in Southern California, and then I ended the video with some footage from a hospital in Italy, which is actually the most advanced hospital in Italy, and just showed what it's like, what they're going through right now, because their curve didn't get flattened. And they are literally just, their medical system is just being pounded by the number of cases that are coming in. And it's, so.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of any curve flattening in Europe or the United States.
Well, hopefully there will be evidence of that. But
the only evidence is for Japan, South Korea, and eventually China. But
yeah, I think nearly all the European countries and USA, they're all increasing numbers. So
yeah, it's doubling every 3 days is the.
Well, Italy today had fewer deaths than yesterday. So that was the first day actually where they had less
people die from it.
Less people die from it. So that may be a good thing, but
could be noise.
Well, it's quite a long way to go yet.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, people. I just hope people continue, at least for where I hear. I hope people continue to take it seriously because, that's how we slow it down, and hopefully that's going to make it manageable for our medical community. So
I did do something. I really think the data that they keep sharing, which is the total number of cases per state here in the States, is really a dumb way to be analyzing this problem. So I calculated per capita rates per million, and California is really not anywhere near the lead in per capita rates per million. It's one of the states that has a lot of cases just because it has such a large population. And there's some other states that I'm much more worried about. Louisiana comes out as being in a whole lot of trouble. And then the governor of Michigan keeps explaining why she's not ordering a lockdown. And they're in the top 10 in the country in both total cases and cases per capita. So I can't imagine her not having the lockdown wasn't some sort of political concession to maybe the auto unions. And I think we got a lot of trouble ahead of us.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of any curves bending. There are some things that were done in those other cultures that we're not doing. One thing is there was much more testing, and there was also masks worn by the general public. And when people were found to have the virus, they were forced to quarantine away from their family. So none of those things are happening. I'm not sure the key factors are even identified yet. But it is good that South Korea and Japan, they definitely have bent the curve. But I think too many people think that
after doing many more than the European countries and are doing at the moment.
And I think too many people think they know the answer who don't, which I don't know the answer. But
I think I expect we can go into a lockdown also in the Netherlands in just a few days. Actually, I think it would be good to do because we are heading towards the same disaster as Italy is in right now with their intensive care units numbers, which and they actually can't bury their death at the moment. So it's. I think the Netherlands is going into that direction also. So I really hope there's going to be a lockdown because most people, well, they don't take it seriously enough. My sister was walking, and some guys on a bike drove past her, and one of them was cuffing her in the face. Can you believe it? In these circumstances, it's well.
Yeah.
I was devastated to hear that. So and maybe I can say I wrote a song which is called the Corona Lockdown Song. I will post the link in the chat.
Yep.
And maybe some people wanna hear it.
Yeah, maybe a good way to end the episode.
Yeah, I don't know if you can play it live, but it's the link is in the chat. So
yeah, it's a video link. Right?
Yeah,
it's a video.
Yeah,
I don't know if you could you play the video here, Erekose?
This one here.
Actually, my daughter worked with me on that song, so we together we wrote the lyrics, and we were trying to make people feel good about being in a lockdown. So,
how old's your daughter? About 3.
My daughter?
Yeah, you're not that old.
She's 28.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah, won't you believe? The Corona Lockdown song.
You're right.
You may recognize the tune. I don't hear anything. by the way.
You have to click on.
Pass it on to 2 or 3 and they repeat the same. So right before you know,
Yeah, that's the one.
coronavirus hits the world. What can we do to fight? It's spreading and it's multiplying every day and night. You pass it on to 2 or 3 and they repeat the same. So right before you know, you're in a multiplying game. If numbers grow like this, you call it exponential growth. So going out and stop this virus, no, you can't have both. Now you might wonder what to do without those pups, but boy, it's not so bad because at home there's so much to enjoy. A lockdown is safe, a lockdown is safe. You need not go to work or staying home is being brave. A lockdown is fun, a lockdown is fun. Discover things that otherwise you never would have done. A lockdown is cool, a lockdown is cool. Cause I like watching Netflix better than that silly school. A lockdown is fine, a lockdown is fine. Flattening the curve into the line. The first day in lockdown while cleaning up the attic stuff, I found my old guitar still having strings quite enough. I learned chords and riffs while googling music on my cell. Before lockdown, I never knew that I could play that well. I did an online course for singing like a rocking star, and after a few days I was progressing really far. On YouTube I got views, the numbers multiplied real fast. So just like that corona, it went viral in a blast. A lockdown is safe. A lockdown is safe. You need not go to work or stay home is being brave. A lockdown is fun. A lockdown is fun. Discover things that otherwise you never would have done. Lockdown is cool. A lockdown is cool. Cause I like watching Netflix better than the city. A lockdown is fine. A lockdown is fine. Together we'll be flattening the curve into the line. I met someone at home and it turned out to be my wife, who I forgot nearly very
I hope so.
Before lockdown, I never knew she's actually kind of cute. So now I get to know her better, and that is quite good.
Very good, sehr gut.
We got some Netflix and chill going on at Rules.
It's fun to fight this virus, making sure it cannot spread. This lockdown thing has benefits, especially in bed. A lockdown is safe. You need not go to work. Staying home is being brave. A lockdown is fun. A lockdown is fun. Things that otherwise you never would have done. A lockdown is cool. A lockdown is cool. Cause I like watching Netflix better than the silly school. A lockdown is fine. A lockdown is fine. Together we'll be flattening the curve into decline. If you stay home, you'll help so many people to survive, especially those healthcare workers risking their own lives. A lockdown is safe. You need not go to work, stay home.
wait for the end. You'll see
A
me.
lockdown is fun. A lockdown is fun. Discover things that otherwise you never would have done. A lockdown is cool. A lockdown is cool. Cause I like watching Netflix never then the scene is cool. A lockdown is fine. A lockdown is fine. Together we'll be flattening the curve into decline.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
There you go,
Okay, so everybody, please share. Please let it go viral.
Yeah.
Reminded me of the ending to Life of Brian.
Oh, yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Always look on the right side of life. With Eric Idle,
You would recognize the tune as Assistant DA. Assistant DA. So,
and then the diminished.
Get viral, Travis. Get to work sharing, buddy. Viral. That's right.
Yeah.
No question mark.
All right, I better get with my wife, guys.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Hey,
Bye-bye.
everybody, you know the song and dance. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. And we'll see you.
And be safe.
Of course.
I'm trying. I'm not
And keep your
drawn to
distance.
going outside because of the temperature. I'll tell you that.
All right, everybody, wash your hands. Don't touch your face. All that stuff.
And,
Social
and
distancing.
keep your distance. Keep your distance.
Stay away from the pubs and restaurants and all that.
Yeah.
Stay away from groups. Come on. It's common sense.
Yeah.
Just use
Stay home.
Stop the world. I want to get off.
You know the song of Stacy. Keep the fuck home. What did you say? Stay the fuck home. So it's something like that.
yeah, Stacey's was good. I love that.
Okay.
All right, guys. Like I said, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.
Bye bye.